So now I'm just going to be taking some Gamsol, a couple bristle brushes, and I'm going to start pushing this sketch around and see what happens. And I'm dipping my brush into Gamsol and lightly dabbing on paper towel to take off excess and see what happens. And I could see, like, this is painted on a white toned canvas, so you probably have a whole different look, of course, if you were on a typical umber sketched, umber toned or sienna toned canvas or panel. And actually on panel this would look probably totally different too, because usually I don't have any texture on my panels. Certain parts I'll leave it overnight, see if it tacks up overnight, because there's not a heavy layer of oil stick. Probably like typical oil paint. If it's thicker, it's going to take longer to dry. Of course, it's a little cool up here in the studio usually. Taking some of that dark color it picks up to go back into, see how that works. And this is like an expedient way to facilitate using your paint without having to clean or go back to a palette often. Find out where you can use it and put it in. Now this little damp area with the I'm going to apply a little more blue over that. Just curious if the stroke still maintains or breaks down enough. I suppose if you had a very heavy turp wash, it would dissolve a little bit when you did that, but spread that around. Off now. My brush is still damp but not soaking wet with turps, because there's already a pretty good layer of the oil stick on there. I don't want to get it runny. Getting a base tone over dark shape of this bush there and here. I'm not too worried about color accuracy at this point. Just and I'm not trying to smooth out the oil stick perfectly. Might try a different stroke here and there. If I feel it's too dark, you'll see in a moment, I'm going to try to come back in with the white and yellow to brighten that a bit. Because this is a little wet turps, goes on kind of slick, no big deal. Just need a couple dabs of yellow and white. It's going to be interesting to see how this dries. Like, I'm expecting it to dry overnight. I'm going to, a little bigger brush, knock this down. A little more, bit heavier with the turps. Been finding lately, especially with all the plein air painting I've been doing, that working small is feeling restrictive. I'm kind of like having the ability to flow some paint around. And I'm working the canvases primed with an oil ground, lead-free oil ground. That I'm liking the way it's taken the paint. Doesn't feel too absorbent. Now what I do with all my paintings, I write on the back. Now I'm getting into the habit of writing the, I'll put the GPS location in there too from Google Maps. And the palette I write on the back of the panel for future reference by people and me if I want to be reminded of what I use to paint the painting. So in this case, it is going to be split primaries, and we have titanium white, burnt umber, ultramarine blue, cobalt blue, cad yellow pale, cad yellow medium, cad red light, and alizarin crimson. The medium I'm going to be using today is Gamblin refined linseed oil. Do my usual testing. And of course it's going to mix a little bit with the previous oil stick color with the white that I have on there, so I don't have to always add more whites to lighten it. Sometimes it's good when you're starting the painting to get as far as long as you can, wet and wet, to facilitate lost edges. Sometimes you might need a little bit more titanium. It's nice to use these bristle brushes in the beginning. Quite the workhorse. And you can start in different parts of painting. Everyone has a way of working depending on subject, but I find usually starting with some darker objects in the painting that I know I can nail. Anything that I know I can get the color correct quickly gives me an indication for the other colors. That always works out. Get this back here. More white. Rinsing my brush out just a bit. Now here's where I'm talking about that, having the paint wet and wet. You can see it's not super thick right now. And don't forget, when you're cutting around shapes, you get too close, it's going to pick up some of that oil stick color, so be careful. Going up, back up into that area along the edge where it meets. Picking up some more whites. I'm going to get a tone of the road in here. Do a test. Okay, I can work with that. Taking the bristle brush. Just a touch of oil in that. Move it around here. Try to. You don't have to, but this is an opportunity. You can always fill it in if you don't like it, but rather than just blocking the road, obviously I'm trying to mimic a few potential directional lines. Just a hint at some textures. And then as you add more later, it'll facilitate giving the illusion maybe of ruts in the road, that sort of thing. Trying to be suggestive in between the spots that I left with the white canvas with this lighter tone. This could potentially be layers of scumbled paint in the end product of the painting, but holding my brush more on the side. Let me zoom in a little bit to show you that paint's on there, and I'm very lightly holding it, twisting a little in general direction of the perspective of the ruts that would be in the road, little undulations. Paint's not super thick right now. This will be built on later. Now I'm going to take a little bit of the white, just burnt umber, until I get this method of showing my palette worked out. I'm trying to tell you what I'm mixing, so hope it helps. Trying to plant, pull, see how the stroke is more committed. Try not to overblend or overmix color. Not getting too panicky if the color's a little not what I want, just lightly touch it into the paint that's already there. Just playing around with the palette knife, you can get effects that you can't get with a brush. Try not to just put it on randomly, but trying to facilitate. You don't really see it too much. I'm going to have to get a little more of that umbery with white, a little bit more of that yellow, a very lighter tone. I want a flickering effect to suggest bits of gravel and texture in the road that would be there from all kinds of stuff. Okay, now I'm gonna get some grass tones going on. Test it. Once I spread that around and intermix this with the oil stick color that's there, should be fairly nice. And this kind of cooler, just lightly scumbling a meeting point there. This cooler blue-green it's going to set off nicely against the bales there. Just trying to create some interesting scumbling effects. Get that house shadow in there. I'm taking some of the sky color. Lizard Crimson. Put that in there and see what happens. Don't forget I have the white oil stick in there pretty good, but still need to add some white. I'm going to wipe off the excess straight white a little bit on the brush into that, letting it slightly cut into that green, which would be kind of interesting because it's kind of bouncing back into the house a tad. Straight white again. And as I use each brush, I'm not really cleaning it yet. I have them down here on my left by my feet. Facilitate if I need that color again to manipulate something else, I can just pick it up and do it. Shadow the roof in there. More ultramarine. Mixed into the color used for the shadow of the house with a little bit of alizarin. But now it has more blue in it. Get the metal roof here. And I am going to have to make that pole happen a little bit so I know what's going on a tad, but we'll get to that. And you want to watch how these angles, like this is coming into this, but I can clean this part up. Needs to bump out just a bit, but I'll do that when I put in the highlight on the roof on the other side of the house. Mixing up fairly thick because I'm going to try to stroke it on there with purpose here. So obviously has mixed a little with paint around it, no big deal. Sometimes we get caught up and you want to make angles right at like the angle of the roof as it goes back in perspective a bit. I can clean it up with the tree around it, so don't get too caught up in that. Adding a little more white, and I'm going to reinforce where it mixed a little bit with the green down here. Just bold, plant, pull. Some of you have been wanting a little more detailed shots, so I'll see how close I can get in here. Let's try that. Now this is where I can shape up the roof here. You go like this. Touch of oil. Be careful, don't go too much crazy and you're getting your oil too oily and stuff. Cut that perspective line. Cut it again this way. Makes that a little lighter by default. And just a little blue and cobalt blue and cad yellow light into this mixture. Give me a base to build on for scumbling layers later. Especially trying to lightly intermix the edge of the tree line here with the white that I have back here, white and blue. So I've been working on the hay bales. I decided to make just 3 there instead of 4. I like the odd number. I've taken some cad yellow medium with some white to get the base tone. Then for this little shadowy color, which of course as it dries I'll work on more, is ultramarine blue, burnt umber, some of that alizarin crimson. So just for now getting some layers to build on later. Now getting some umber, ultramarine blue, some of the blue-green that I mixed from earlier with the cobalt and yellow. A way to set off this bale. Not going to the edge of the other shape there because I'm going to have rim lighting. I love kind of doing this dark against light. This opportunity to build on starting some shape definition. Thinking a little bit like an opportunity to work at like an impressionist. Not too crazy, I mean I don't go too crazy, but you know. And the highlight in this tree is going to be interesting because, you know, highlights on dark objects as opposed to like this light mass next to it, you know, they're not going to be the same. The light absorbs differently, so something we got to watch out for here. See that? Same size. I'll build this tree up higher. And I'm going to cut this down a bit. Just a paper towel, a little terp. Fix it up a bit. And I might put another little different color tree maybe in here, break up this completely dark looking tree because you have that same kind of shape going on there too. So things to be wary of. I think what I'm going to do is, I mean, you have this 1, 2, 3 thing. I'll cut in a little with the sky on that too. Just making choices as I go along. That's the way it works. It's going to make the power poles kind of a bluish gray, some umber, ultramarine blue, a little bit of mud that's already on my palette. And kind of all tied together anyway because it's all related. Colors have been used elsewhere. So, going to try to do this freehand here. Plant and pull, do not stop. What I like about this, especially on the canvas, is it tends to have a broken effect that could be useful for suggesting textures and stuff. So, plant and pull. Now I'm going to get some more warmy tones on here. Plant and pull. Because don't forget, I have that blue oil stick tone under the... And you know, not all pulls are the same color either. You know, I'm not cleaning out the brush yet. And don't forget there's a shadow. There's a shadow. As the shadow's coming across, I'm going to catch some of that pull. Once this layer all dries and I scum on some more, that'll pop more. Trying just to tickle the edges there. Pick back up that cadmium white, light and white. That's where I can have some fun cutting in around this. Going to put in a little more contrast over here on the left, right. Pull that out a little more, and boom. And this place is blue in the plein air sketch, but I'm going to make it just kind of like it's like a house, but I'm going to make it a barn. Nothing major, just adjusting. I'm leaving some of the white underpainting, so when it dries I can decide if I want to. It's going to facilitate giving some weathered textures already without me having to work at it. So we'll do the shadow side. Again, keeping it fluid, so to speak, in terms of letting it be something else later on, maybe. I mean, in terms of color. Got a little bit of cobalt touched in there. And just leave it a little shadow edge under the eave here. I'm going to go ahead and cut the sky in around this. The sky, the cloud kind of thing. Going to use a little oil for this so I get the paint somewhat fluid. Touching into a little bit of the original sky color. Just a touch of umber to get to what I was working with before. And the key here is going to be make a decision and plant that stroke. So I'm going to try to cut this down. What I'm going to do is try to shape the tree first somewhat and then cut down into it. Don't worry about power pole. I don't know if you can see this, but picks up a little bit of the paint of the green there, so I get that off. I don't clean the brush, I just dab it on a paper towel, replant the stroke, plant some more, and then I just repaint. And I can just blend that into the sky around. So we'll leave this here for now. Okay, everybody, I'm going to wrap up this session. It's turned out pretty well, kind of liking it. Definitely going to be a process. I'm trying more real-time video this time, so I hope you like it. Try to be more commentary about my thought process in painting. Hope you found it useful. Let me know in the comments. And thanks for watching. Don't forget to follow me on Facebook. Check out my website. And that's it until next time. Bye.